What is the latest in the Israel-Hamas War? As my regular viewers know, I am traveling this week and cannot upload my regular summaries of what is going on every 24 to 48 hours in the war. These are just a few of the main highlights that have developed in the last several days. Some of them may have some very long-lasting repercussions. On the hostage front, after I reported on May 17th that the bodies of 3 hostages were recovered in the Gaza Strip, on May 18th it was reported that the body of a 4th hostage, Ron Binyamin, was also recovered in that same operation in the Gaza Strip and brought back to Israel. Like the other hostages, the IDF stated that it has confirmed evidence that Binyamin was killed already on October 7th and that his body was kidnapped back to the Gaza Strip and has now been retrieved back to Israel. With that, the number of hostages remaining in the Gaza Strip is now 128, of which the IDF has publicly confirmed that at least 39 of them are considered dead. I've been asked in several comments in the last several days, and I'll say here and caveat that I'm sorry I've not answered some of those comments, I have been traveling, about the seeming retroactive statements of the IDF with regards to the fact that the bodies were retrieved, and immediately the military announced that the hostages were killed on October 7th and that it had evidence about this. Some people ask, why didn't the IDF publish evidence about this further? If it had it, is this the IDF trying to cover up for something? So I'm going to say off the cuff that I don't have any insider information, but here is what I know about how the IDF would have confirmed this evidence. In the Israeli law, religious authorities have a legal status with regards to determining and confirming the death of a civilian or a soldier. In other words, the only legal authority that can determine this is actually the religious establishment. Jewish religious tradition has a set of rules regarding what is sufficient proof to determine someone's death, which does not always include things like video footage which may have been retrieved as a result of the October 7th attack. Accordingly, there are cases where the military has definitive quote-unquote proof that someone has been killed, but since that proof is not enough for the religious authority, the person is not declared dead by the military. The military has to wait by law until the religious authority actually concurs. As a result, when the body is recovered and the death is confirmed, the military can state that the person was killed previously based on the other evidence. Again, I am not making the argument that that is the case here. I do not actually know. I will state that this exact type of scenario has happened in the past, where military intelligence knew, quote-unquote, that someone was dead. However, it could not actually state that, and only after the body was retrieved was the military able to publish its evidence saying actually the person was killed before, but it could not confirm this according to religious law until now. That may be the case happening now. Again, that is just meant to answer some of the comments that people have left. Other highlights. On the fighting front in the Gaza Strip, the intense fighting continues in Jabalia refugee camp and in the southeastern parts of Rafah. On May 20th, it was reported that the operation to retrieve the bodies of the 4 hostages actually occurred in Jabalia refugee camp in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, and that the bodies were found in previously unidentified tunnels. I remind everyone the IDF took over Jabalia already in November of 2023. The fighting since then has recurred in Jabalia yet again, and according to at least what has been reported, the IDF uncovered new evidence that led them to the finding of the bodies of these 4 hostages. In addition, the fighting continues in the southeastern parts of Rafah. The IDF has recently estimated that close to 1 million Palestinian civilians have already evacuated the areas of Rafah as a result of this fighting, leaving between 300,000 to 400,000 people behind in the heart of the city of Rafah. Other highlights from the last several days. In what appears to be an accident, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, alongside Iranian Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian, both died in a helicopter crash on May 20th. Despite the escalation between Israel and Iran, neither side appears to be suggesting that Israel or the Mossad had anything to do with this accident. The helicopter reportedly crashed when the helicopter was traveling through a mountainous area that had very, very severe fog and weather conditions. It is also important to note that neither side would have an interest in publicizing that Israel had anything to do with this. Even if it did, Iran would not want to publicize that the Mossad had such abilities, and Israel obviously would not want to make it public. However, again, it appears, at least from on the surface of it, that Israel did not have anything to do with it, at least as of now. This is still less than 24 hours old. The death of Raisi is going to be a major blow to the Iranian regime. Raisi is one of the closest confidants of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and was also signaled as one of the potential successors of Khamenei as Supreme Leader if and when Khamenei dies. He's 85 years old. However, it's important to note that actually more importantly in the context of the Israel-Hamas war, the death of the foreign minister Abdullahian is actually going to be the more crucial one. Abdullahian has very, very close ties to the Iranian militias across the Middle East. He is very fluent in Arabic. He has a long history in coordinating the activities between the different militias. His death is likely to be a very big blow to the way the militias coordinate their war with Israel and their retaliations. I will say that does not necessarily mean there will be a de-escalation. It is also possible there will actually be an escalation because if the militias are not coordinated. That means each one can more fend for itself, and local escalations can happen. Either way, that is likely to have a very big impact on the war. Other highlights from the political front. In Israel, major fractures have come to fruition within the war cabinet, which may have substantial impact on the way the war develops. On May 18th, Minister Gantz held a press conference and issued a public ultimatum to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, essentially demanding that the war cabinet convene and agree on the goals of the war by June 8th. Otherwise, Gantz and his party will resign from the government, essentially dismantling the war cabinet. The goals that Gantz insisted on include 5 things, including returning the hostages as the main function of the war, continuing to remove Hamas's military threat and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip, securing a return of the civilians to the northern parts of Israel to their homes by September 1st, and setting a deadline for shifting the weight of the campaign to the northern front, advancing normalization talks with Saudi Arabia as part of a larger plan creating an alliance of the free world against Iran, and as part of this deal, establishing a joint US, EU, Israeli and Palestinian committee in order to manage civilian matters in the Gaza Strip in the day after the war, and locating local actors within the Gaza Strip to administer this alongside Israel's security control of the Strip. Gantz's demands were heavily condemned by the coalition, with different elements, including Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, stating that they constitute the defeat of Israel and would mean a victory for Hamas in the war. It remains to be seen what's going to happen. Gantz issued that statement and said very publicly that his party will resign by June 8th. If that does happen, it is likely to have a substantial impact on the way the war develops. Other news, Karim Khan, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, the ICC, stated on May 20th that he plans on issuing arrest warrants for the leaders of both sides of the war, including Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, Hamas leader in the Gaza Strip Yahya Sinwar, and Hamas commander of the Al-Qassam brigades Mohammad Def. The suspicion is a range of charges regarding both war crimes and in some cases crimes against humanity committed by the different sides during the war. Responses in Israel were overwhelmingly extreme, including Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu stating that the charges are not only against him and the defense minister, but rather against the entire state of Israel and the IDF soldiers, adding that 80 years ago the Jewish people had no defense against their enemies, but no more, and that he pledges that this will not cause any change in the war. Netanyahu also convened, or is passing around, a petition within the Knesset, already signed by 106 out of the 120 members of the Knesset, condemning the ICC, stating that this is an anti-Semitic act, and stating that Israel will not participate with any charges at the ICC levels against the country. Hamas also condemned the issuing of warrants against his leaders. Hamas spokesman Sami Abu Zoheri stated that the decision equates between the executioner and the victim and encourages Israel to continue the war and its war crimes. With this, Netanyahu and Gallant might be the first leaders from a democratic, quote-unquote, Western country to have arrest warrants issued against them in the ICC. The next step is that the prosecutor's request is going to be submitted to a panel of judges in the International Criminal Court, and that panel will decide whether to issue the arrest warrants or not. If they do, this will effectively obligate the close to 145 countries that are signed on the Rome Treaty to arrest anyone on the warrant list if they set foot in the respective country, which is going to be very complicated for Israel's leaders. For Hamas leaders, it will likely be less complicated. A lot of the countries where Hamas is welcomed are not signed on the Rome Treaty. Both the United States and the United Kingdom already began mounting heavy pressure on the ICC to not follow through on the warrants. President Biden himself condemned the equation of warrants to both sides, stating there is no equality between Israel and Hamas. However, several different international law experts in Israel have already stated that this is likely a done deal and the warrants are going to be issued. Those are my highlights from the last several days. I am Alon Burstein. I'm a visiting assistant professor and an Israel Institute fellow in the Department of Political Science at the University of California, Irvine. If you find these reports important, please do remember to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications so you know when reports come out. Feel free to leave any questions or comments in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.